Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, presented by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, the world's largest ride enthusiast organization dedicated to the appreciation, promotion, and preservation of roller coasters around the globe. So please keep your hands and feet inside the podcast at all times as we welcome in your host.
Hello, enthusiasts. It's your host, Jessica Gardner. You know, our members are truly incredible. So many have special talents, and some of them, like today's guest, combine their gifts and their love of theme parks and roller coasters to create something wonderful for others. Bill Shea is the author and illustrator of a fantastic children's book that came out last year. Many of you met Bill at his table at last year's CoasterCon, and maybe you even bought his book. Well, here to chat with him about his inspiring book and his wonderful story is Correspondent Bob Randolph.
Thanks, Jessica. Today, I am honored, very honored to have a gentleman who has a wonderful book out. If you've been a kid, or maybe you're still a kid at heart, this book is going to be a great thing. The book is called A Grandpa Joe Day, and I am pleased to have the author of that book, Bill Shea. Bill, welcome to the ACE Ride With Us podcast.
Thanks so much, Bob, for having me. I'm really super psyched to be doing this with ACE. I just joined about a year ago, and I'm having such a great time with ACE. It's just been a lot of fun.
Well, we are super excited to have you as a member of ACE because it takes all kinds to make ACE work. And, you know, somebody who is of your talent level with not only the writing, but the illustrations, that's always a welcome part, you know, to the group, because we need people who can do everything. Because, again, we're a volunteer organization. You never know. We might come to you one day for some illustrations. You never know. It could happen.
That would be awesome. I mean, I had a blast drawing this book. It really kept me sane during COVID. So it was a lot of fun. It really took me out of my space. And there's nothing more than I love than my grandfather and roller coasters. So it was the perfect combination.
It's hard to go against something that you absolutely love. And that's, I know how much love I had for my grandfather while he was still alive. I get it. I totally get it. But let's talk a little bit about you real quick.
Okay.
You mentioned that you're an ACE member. You've been a member for a little over a year now. Again, welcome to the mix. We're glad to have you a part of this. I know that you're a dog lover as well.
Yes, I have 3 dogs. I have a golden doodle mini named Sherlock. I have a rescue named Dodger, who was a pandemic puppy. And then one of our really good friends passed away about a year and a half ago, and we took his dog in. When he was leaving us, he asked if we would take his dog Jackson in with us, and we did.
So, that's fantastic. I love to hear things like that, you know, because, again, I'm a dog lover as well, grew up with dogs, and dogs, we don't deserve dogs sometimes. We really honestly don't.
Dogs are awesome. The only thing about dogs is that they don't live long enough. I wish they could live for 30, 40 years as opposed to 12, 15, you know?
Right there with you.
But they sure are the best.
Yeah, they are. Bill, where's home for you?
Home for me is North Salem, Westchester, which is in New York. It's about, maybe an hour outside of New York City, north of New York City.
What would you consider your home park then? What if I were to say what park you can only go to one place that's closest to you, what's your home park?
Well, the park that's closest to me in my heart is Rye Beach Playland. That's the very first amusement park I ever went to when I was a kid. And it was the amusement park that my grandpa Joe took me to. And it was the very first park that I went to where I went on my first roller coaster ride. So the Dragon Coaster was my first roller coaster ride that my grandpa Joe took me on. So that park isn't like, it's in like some of the other parks around the country, like Sandusky or Six Flags. It's got an old school feel to it, but it's just, every time I go there, I just think of my grandpa. And that's why I love going there.
I got you. I totally understand that. I know that the Dragon Coaster obviously is very close to your heart. It's a part of the book, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But other than that coaster, other than the Dragon Coaster, what's your favorite?
Oh, Okay, so I have a couple of crazy experiences. The Millennium Force out in Cedar Point. I remember going on that for the very first time and being scared out of my bejeebas. And it was so awesome that I had to go back on it again. So that was really sort of a special coaster for me because it was one of the first times I went on a coaster that big. Another roller coaster that I really love, and this is special because I have a really good friend with a son with special needs. And this was maybe 6 years ago. We went to Six Flags in New England, and we took him on Superman the ride. And
Ooh.
my friend's son, I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but my friend's son, who is such a great kid, has epilepsy. And he didn't have any friends. So me and my buddy and another buddy, we decided, you know what? We're going to give this kid a day in the park and we're going to treat him like he's any other kid. And we went there and the first roller coaster we took him on was Superman the ride. We got off that ride. I looked at my buddy Jack. I looked at my friend Ron. I go, what the heck did we just do? But my friend's son, Christopher, absolutely loved it because it was, I think, the first time that he wasn't treated like a baby because of his disability.
Right. And that's what's so important is just, those types of experiences where it's just another day.
Right.
Nothing has to be changed. Nothing has to be special, if you will. It's just another day. Those days are so important for everybody.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing day. And the other thing that's really funny, Bob, about that day when we went to Six Flags in New England was when we pulled into the parking lot, it started to rain. Not only did it start to rain, but the song Roller Coaster by Ohio Players was playing on the radio. Roller coaster, right? So it's raining out. We go inside. I've already signed up for fast passes. We get into the place where we go. Like I say to my buddies, I'm going to go see about getting the fast pass. It's raining out. The woman gets on, she goes, this is the way it's going to be all day. The weather's not supposed to change. So if you buy a fast pass and it's still raining, you can't get your refunds. And I'm thinking like, well, you know what? Grandpa Joe would do it. Grandpa Joe would get the fast pass. We're here at the park. When are we coming back here? I'm going to buy the fast pass. So we go, I get the fast pass. We come out maybe 15, 20 minutes later, the rain stops, just like in the book. And we were on that Superman ride within like 15 minutes. That's how crazy. So we had the park in the beginning all to ourselves, and then people started coming in later on in the day.
Oh, then it looks like everything turned out for the best. That's you can't ask for a better day than that when things just kind of work themselves out.
We call that, again, a Grandpa Joe day because Grandpa would never turn the car around when it started to rain. He'd be like, oh, what the heck we're doing here? We're here. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Get the fast pass. When do we come? We're not coming back. Get the fast pass. So that's what I did.
Right. That's awesome. So real quick, before we dive into the book, a little bit more about your background. You used to be a creative director for Autism Speaks, and that, I think, Autism Speaks is probably one of the best known autism charities. What all did that job entail, being a creative director for them?
Wow, Bob, that's an interesting question because I joined the organization in the very beginning in May of 2005. So I joined Autism Speaks in May of 2005 when they just launched it. Bob Wright, who was the head of NBC at the time, and his wife, Suzanne Wright, had a grandson that was on the spectrum. So they were doing a 5-day series on the Today Show about Autism Speaks. Now, my connection to the Wrights is that I'm really good friends with their son, Chris. Previous to that, I was a group creative director at McCann Erickson. I worked on Major League Baseball. I worked on Coca-Cola. I worked on I Can't Believe It's Not Butter by Fabio. I did a bunch of really high-level blue-collar stuff. And I just was burnt out by the industry. So I left McCann Erickson in 2005. I see Bob and Suzanne Wright on the Today Show. I call my buddy Chris at 9:00 right after the Today Show ended. I said, hey, Chris, I see that your mom is starting a charity, Autism Speaks. I would love to help her out. I've got all this experience by working in advertising. He goes, hold on a second. So he calls up his mom. Next thing you know, I'm on the phone with Suzanne Wright. We're talking back and forth. I've met her previously and we've hit it off. I loved her to pieces. And she says, meet me at Bob Wright's office next week. You're going to be my creative director. And that's how I started with that. So what that job entailed was, in the beginning, was all about creating the brand and getting involved with the ad council. Mr. Wright's main objective was to get the charity involved with the ad council, because he knew how important and how strong the branding and the message would be if we hooked up with the ad council. So my main job when I was working there for the first 8 years was working one-on-one with the ad council and creating all this amazing advertising that they did through BBDO, the advertising agencies where the creatives was. So that was one aspect of my job. My other aspect of the job was sort of like getting people to know what autism was, because in the beginning, when Autism Speaks first started, people thought that autism, they didn't know what it was. And they thought it was like an old person's disease. They didn't really understand, a lot of things about the disorder. And so it was sort of like a learning curve there. And then it was also about, dealing with branding with walks and teaching volunteers how to not to do things with the logo, how to protect the logo. And, we would do invitations, we would meet with corporations, we would just, Suzanne had this motto is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I remember one time, one of our first corporate partners was Bachman's Pretzels with Scott Carpenter, who was the president of the company at the time, who also had a child on the spectrum. And we go to the meeting. Suzanne goes, "Pal, what are we going to do? What are we going to ask for?" I said, "We're going to ask them for a pretzel in the shape of our puzzle piece," because our logo was a puzzle piece. And she goes, "I love it." So we go in there, we meet with Scott, we have an amazing meeting. A year later, Bachman Pretzels comes out with a puzzle piece pretzel.
Very cool.
And that was the beginning of corporations lining up behind Autism Speaks and sort of getting involved in pushing the agenda forward. Within a matter of years, the ad council, back then they were doing a lot of print ads and TV commercials. The Autism Speaks was like the #1 charity for a couple of years running. And it was just like everything just sort of, it was like the perfect zeitgeist where everything sort of came together, and it just really blew the issue up. And then now people know what autism is. And, the saying back then was, it's time to listen, because we were trying to get people to, learn about not only what the disorder is, but what the signs of autism was. So that was another really important aspect of being the creative director there. It was like getting people to know what the signs are so that they could look for what the signs of autism are, so that their children could get early intervention, because we know through research that early intervention is the best key for helping your child. And then on the flip side of that, Bob, it's like with autism is that the one thing that I learned is that everybody has challenges. Everybody has things that they cannot do, but everybody has things that they can do. And so with that, you see some of the most amazing things that people that are on the spectrum can do. And that has been so like life affirming for me. It's really, really touched my heart in many ways.
Well, that message of positivity right there is just, that's amazing. The way that you look at that. And I can attest to what you just said. There is a band, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and there is a band here called Blue Spectrum. And one of their members is on the autism spectrum. And I believe, I think he's either a guitar player or a bass player, and he's fantastic. The band itself is very, very good. I've seen them a couple of times, and they're just genuinely nice people. And they make a big deal about, the autism spectrum and how to recognize some things. And, it lends its credence to what you just said, is that, there's always something that you can do. And that positivity, regardless of what you think you may or may not be able to, there's always something there that's on the positive side. And I love that.
Exactly. And these people have a gift. And, if we can unlock their potential, the gift is amazing. So I've met so many amazing people through that organization, and I'm still connected to them to this day, because, there's a connection with these people that we all started, and we created something. And, that's pretty amazing.
Let's actually talk about the book, Grandpa Joe Day. And of course, this is a story about you and your grandpa. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, my grandpa and I were exceptionally close. We did a lot of things together. So anything with the grandpa, I'm all about because again, as close as I was to mine, and the story itself is just, fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the book. You mentioned that you did this during the pandemic is when you really kind of started with the book. Go into that a little bit.
Well, Bob, I had this idea for a really long time. I mean, a really long time. And I just, it's one of those things you put on the back burner. It's like, I'm going to get to it. Like I said earlier, I was working in advertising and then I worked at Autism Speaks and I was really, really busy all the time. And then when, would work on it occasionally. And then when COVID hit, I was just like, okay, this is crazy. I got to do something where I don't lose my, so I keep sane, I need my sanity. So what I did was I pulled it out. I just started to draw. I have a box filled of swipe photos of amusement parks that I kept. I also, every time I would go to the amusement park, I would take lots of pit photos. So what I ended up doing is I pulled those pictures out and I used it as reference for this book. What I also did was to keep me sane was I put on a lot of fun music. Like I put on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I put on Wicked. I put on Toy Story. I put on
Nice.
Little Mermaid. I put on, Toy Story, Disney music, fun music, just to sort of like get me into a better headspace, get me into a better headspace. So that's why I use this music. And it also helped me sort of tap into my inner child because I wanted to really, one of these things when you're writing a book is like, you think about, well, who are you writing for? Well, my readers are kids. And so I wanted to sort of inject some of that fun into the book. So the music and the photos helped me do that and help me sort of incorporate it into the book. Also, this story is based on a true story from when I was a kid. I mean, granted, I had my brothers and my sisters with me, but I didn't want to draw 4 kids running around an amusement park, so I just made it about me and my grandfather because it was
there you go.
just a little easy to do. But this definitely happened. A little bit of the magic, maybe not so much with the fortune teller, but we did go to an amusement park, and it was raining. They told us we weren't going to get our money back, and Grandpa was like, "Well, stay, we're here." And then the rain stopped, and we basically had the amusement park to ourselves. So
very nice, very nice. That always makes for a good day. How long did it take you to put the book together? You said you started it in the pandemic, and I know the book came out.
The book came out in March of this past year, so it took me a couple of years. So it's 2024. So what I did was I did it in 20 and 21, and then when I started finishing the illustrations, what happens, Bob, is creative people, we're afraid to fail, right? So I got a little intimidated by my illustrations, believe it or not. And I didn't think that they were going to be good enough for a book. So I kind of like panicked a little bit and I sort of put the thing on the shelf. And then my buddy, my best friend, came in and said, "What are you doing with this book? This book is fantastic, Bill. Why aren't you pursuing this book? You're going to drop dead. They're going to come into your house, into your studio, find these illustrations and throw them out because they don't know because they don't mean anything because they're all over the place. Finish your blanking book." So what I ended up doing is after he told me that, I really focused in, I finished it. And then I sort of, I put together, there's this company called Mix Books. So I did the book old school. I didn't do it on the computer. I did it with magic marker, pencil, and paper. So I drew it in my studio. I drew it freehand because I'm not really, as tech savvy as you are, I'm the opposite. I'm really like, I just like the feeling of drawing on paper and markers, and I'm really good at it because I've been doing it my entire life. So I had these illustrations. So I have a really good friend that I worked with when I worked with through Autism Speaks, Yvonne, and she came in and she photographed everything and we scanned everything into her computer. And then what we ended up doing was we ended up putting together a book on Mixed Books where it was like, I literally put the book together. And then I was figuring, well, it'll be easier for me to hand this out to people and get people interested than, if I sent them a manuscript, because I didn't know the avenue to go with, because I just never did a book before. So, and it was also my mother's birthday coming up. So I gave the book to my mother for her birthday. She loved it. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to make some extra copies and I'm going to hand them out to some of my friends with kids to see if the kids liked it. Well, I handed it out to the kids. You know, kids don't lie. And the response
Right.
was amazing. These kids were like, you drew these pictures? Oh, I love this story. This story is so great. Oh my God, you gotta get this book published. I love this. My dad's been reading it to me, every night for the last couple of weeks. So I was like, okay, I have something here. So then what I started to do is I said, okay, I'm going to see if I can do the traditional route. I'm going to see if I can get a publisher. Well, I kept hitting dead ends here and there. Somebody said to me, I don't have enough deep pockets, meaning that I don't have the money to sort of do all this stuff. And
Right.
then I found out that I had a friend named Matt who self-published with this company called KWE. And I called them up and I said, so how did you do with KWE? And he goes, oh, they're great. They helped me get my copyright. They helped me get me into Amazon. Helped me get my ISDN number so I can sell in bookstores. You got to meet this woman, Kim. So what I ended up doing is I had a conversation with Kim. I met her. I instantly fell in love with her. And I knew that she was the right person for me to do the book because she got the book. I sent her a copy of the book. And so from there, it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So then it took about a year to sort of get the book finalized and pick out a date. Meanwhile, and this is I was taking care of my father. My father, through the pandemic and everything, he was living in Brooklyn. My stepmother just passed away. I got him out of Brooklyn during the pandemic. I got him into an assisted living facility. And then as his health started deteriorating, I got him into a nursing home, which is literally 5 minutes from my house. So a lot of my time over the past 5 years while I was doing this book, through COVID, over the past 4 years dealing with COVID, I was basically my father's main caretaker.
Oh, wow.
So Kim said to me while we were doing this, I said, Kim, how come my book's not going to come? How come my book's not going to come out? She goes, Bill, your book's going to come out when the right time. I know you don't believe me, but the book's going to come out the right time. On December 7th, my father passed away from complications from breaking his hip. And it was sort of like, that's when she said to me, your book's coming out in March. Let's pick a date. So we go looking up in the calendar and she said, March 20th is the International Day of Happiness. That's the day we're going to release your book. And that's the day that I released my book.
Oh,
now, the other
very
thing,
cool.
Isn't that so cool? And then I had my launch party at this movie theater in Connecticut called the Prospector Movie Theater. And what this movie theater does is they hire people with special needs. And they work at the movie theater. My best friend's son, who I took to the amusement park, works at this movie theater. So I wanted to have my party there because I wanted to sort of not only celebrate International Day of Happiness, but I also wanted to give back to this amazing movie theater.
That is very cool.
So, but the flip side of it is I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing with my book if my father was still here. So my father passed away on December 7th at 90 years old. And his gift to me, because I took care of him for the last 5 years, was being able to work on do this book. So this is sort of like this whole weird life experience that I'm having because of this book.
That's an amazing story. That is just, there's so much there. I mean, that's a great way to look at it. Number one,
right?
Because of the attitude, and again, I'm sure, and some of that comes again across, with the book and the story that's in the book. And I think it's just your attitude in general, and the way you approach things, and that's a great way to look at all of that. Those events all led up to something very good for you,
Right.
Something that most people would look at as bad. You turned into a great thing, and that is a wonderful story in and of itself right there. Thank you.
I mean, I look at it as a gift, because if you would have told me when I was 20 years old that I'd end up being my father's main caretaker when I was, at this stage in my life, I'd say you're out of your mind. But it was such a gift, Bob, because we learned things about each other that we didn't know about each other. We were able to tell each other that how much we loved him. He loved the book. he was really excited to see that the book was coming out. So he was a really big supporter of the book. And I tell everybody, somebody asked me, so what do you want this book to do? I want to just share Grandpa's message of positivity and optimism. It's like, it's raining. Things don't always go your way, but eventually the clouds are going to lift and things are going to be okay. And so being able to share this story with, going to my father's old nursing home, going to a hospital, going to schools, sharing this story with kids and adults has been amazing. It's just been such an incredible experience. I tell people that I feel like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, because this book has helped me reconnect with people that I haven't seen in a really long time. And that has been it's like the cherry on the cake. It's like the ultimate roller coaster ride.
We've talked about the book and the illustrations and how great that those are. And, again, the fact that you did all of the illustrations, they're not computer generated. As you said, colored pencils and magic markers. And I love the illustrations. From what I've seen, I really love everything that's there. Again, because it has that I don't want to say homemade quality to it, but it's not that sterile computer that we see in everything nowadays. It's not an AI. It's not, perfectly done. It looks great. It's really colorful. But let's talk about the story itself, about that day that you and your grandpa went to the park and, raining. Tell me a little bit more about that, just without giving the whole story away.
Well, like I said earlier, the story is really special to me because, it's sort of like, it's very positive in that, it gives kids hope that, things aren't, like I said earlier, things aren't going to always go your way. But, it's like, I remember just, waiting, circling the date on the calendar and waiting for that day to come and being really excited. And, waking up that morning and seeing that, it's like, oh my man, it was like the end of the world. It was raining and thunder and lightning, and turning the TV on and hearing the weather person say that it's going to rain all day and that, it's going to be a washout. And so I just sort of like, if you go through the book, there's a lot of Easter eggs in here too, because there's like, the name of the cereal is Ruth Street Cereal, and that's the street that I grew up. My dog is in there. I have when Billy wakes up in bed, there's a toy chest on the bottom. I actually made that toy chest for my niece and my nephew who live in Florida. And I just really wanted to get Grandpa's essence into the book. The car is his old car. He always used to wear, he used to have pens and stuff in his pockets. So I wanted to include that. I really wanted to sort of like capture his essence as much as I could. But, and then, the amusement park inside is like, it's sort of like a mesh of all these amusement parks that I went to that I loved. Sandusky's in here, and Playland's in here, and Busch Gardens is in here, and it's like, Six Flags is in here. There's even the fortune teller is a nod to the amusement park and I went to in Barcelona. My friends to this amusement. We were in Barcelona. It's like, there's an amusement park on top of the hill. We got to go to that. So that's, and I really wanted to sort of like, the carousel is from, that park in Barcelona. And I really just wanted to incorporate all that stuff together.
Tell me a little bit about your grandpa. I mean, there's a little bit that's on the website. I know that he was a mailman.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, some of the message that's in the book about the positivity, the UPS or the USPS motto is neither snow nor rain nor heat, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that kind of played into this whole story a little bit and what he taught you along the way?
I totally think that was part of his DNA. Grandpa's DNA was that, if it rained and snowed, he still would deliver the mail. So nothing really sort of kept him back. And I think he sort of like, he applied that to everything else in his life. The other thing about my grandfather was that he was a great painter. He used to paint oil paintings. In fact, if you could see the clown back there, you can't see it on the podcast, but he painted that clown, which terrorized my little brother when we were kids, and I had to take it down because he kept thinking it would follow him. There's another clown over here that he painted, which is actually, and I incorporated him in the book. But his style of painting was very Hopper-esque. So what he would do is when he was, younger, he would paint looking through the window, or he would set up his easel out on the street. And he lived in the Bronx, so it was a lot of cityscapes and tops of buildings, and very, like I said earlier, very Hopper-esque. And he also taught me how to paint and draw and how to mix colors. And it was sort of like, he sort of saved my life because when I was a kid, I was very artistic, and it was sort of like my father was like, "No kid of mine's going to be an artist." And Grandpa would be like, "Come on over here. I'll show you how to mix the paints. Come on, let's go." And then when I would go visit him, we would go and we would draw together, and he would like tell me how to, change things and make things better and stuff like that. So he was an artist, and he's, his DNA is in me. And that's sort of another reason why I have such a strong connection to him.
Sure. So the book really kind of comes, not only does the story come from him, but the art comes from him as well.
Yes, exactly. He was a great artist, and he was a really amazing man. And it's sort of like I tell this to people all the time. It's like we have people in our lives, and when they pass or when they leave us, we mourn. Well, he passed away when I was in the 7th grade, and here I am as an adult, and I still think about him every day. And I made a book based on what he taught me. And that's like, I say to people, it's like their love is never going to leave your heart. So just cherish it and sort of know that he's still with us. He's still here.
Sounds amazing. Just, it's an amazing story. It's amazing the way that you've connected everything together, and the story, the artwork in it, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Grandpa Joe Day. That is the name of the book. Bill Shea is the author. Bill, if I need a copy of this book, and I'm telling you, I need a copy of this book, where do I go get it?
Well, you can get it several ways. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can ask at your local bookstore. Target just started selling it. You can also get it through my website, which is grandpajoeday.com, where you can see some of the photos of stuff that events that I've been to. There's coloring pages that you could download, and you can have kids color that I give out when I go to the elementary schools, which is a lot of fun. The kids seem to dig the fortune teller the most because he's kind of creepy and weird looking. So there's lots of ways you can get the book, and it's like I said earlier, it's has a special place in my heart, and I'm one lucky man that I was able to do it. And to your listeners out there, if there's something that you want to do, just do it. Just do it. It's like a roller coaster. Just get on that roller coaster and just go for the ride, because it's going to be an awesome ride.
Bill Shea, author, A Grandpa Joe Day. Again, you heard how you can get it. Go out, get you 5 copies of it, and give it to friends. That's the way that this works, right?
It sure does. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. This was amazing. Again, I'm so psyched to be a member of ACE. I met some really awesome people when I went to CoasterCon, and I just love it. It's a great community, and we all have the passion. We all love roller coasters.
Well, Bill, we appreciate having you as a member, and thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Bob. What a special day. Thank you so much.
That wraps up this episode. We would love it if you would subscribe and give us 5 stars. If you have any comments for us or ideas for future episodes, please reach out to us at podcast@aceonline.org. And to connect with ACE in more ways, make sure you're following American Coaster Enthusiasts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Discord. Search for Ride with ACE on all the platforms. And check out ridewithace.com if you're not already a member. Thanks for listening, and I hope you get to ride a coaster today.
Ride With Us is produced by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, a registered 501c3 organization. Visit ridewithace.com for additional information, and we will see you at the parks.